A very good day to you. It is indeed a very, very good day. I hope your week got off to a very great start. It's the middle of the week already and a fantastic time to bring you the Medley Show. Of course, you know every time we're in front of your screen, it's 1 hour of great content and of course, amazing information. Today will not be any different. It will be very, very fantastic. So stick around and I'm sure you have a good time with us. I have fantastic guests in the house and of course, we've curated for you great features that will give you an insight into all that we're talking about. My name is Tochi and I will be your captain aboard this flight. I said flight because today we'll be talking aviation. Yesterday we're evaluating the local flight experience in Nigeria, and like I said, I have fantastic guests in the studio who will be doing justice to our conversation today. So before you get to meet my guests, I took a trip. Okay, so I wanted to give you what it feels like to have a regular flyer's experience in Nigeria. So I took a trip and put this together. So watch this when we get back. You'll get to meet my guests in the studio. Stay with us. Taking a local flight to Nigeria could be all shades of experiences, depending on where you're going and maybe even the airline that you take. Today, I'll share with you what might be a passenger's experience as I journey from Abuja to Lagos and all the way back. So go with me as I share with you all that I have to deal with today. So I'm already seated. Let's see how long it takes us to be in the sky from the time of boarding. Time locked in, 11:13. Let's go.
Estimated flight time to Lagos will be 55 minutes. We shall be cruising at an altitude of 31,000 feet above sea level.
25 minutes later, and then the aircraft begins its taxi for takeoff. Of course, the mandatory in-flight safety instructions soon followed.
Drag the elastic bands over your head. Push time to tighten max on face and breathe normally.
And up we went as the plane gradually rose to a level of 10,000 feet into the wide, bright sky. So far, it's been a great tour, great weather, and a generally good flight. But this is just my experience, and so I sought to know what might be the experience of a few other passengers aboard the aircraft.
For me, I always go for first flights of the day. The ones you have for 6 a.m., 6:30, 7 a.m., the first flight of the day, because I've come to understand that the first 2 flights of the day actually go as planned.
Coming back from Abuja to Lagos has been very smooth for me. I've really not had any delay coming back from Abuja back to Lagos, but from Lagos to Abuja, that's where the delay and the issue is for me. Yeah.
There's just one time that they mistakenly carried my luggage, put it in the cabin, and I was about to enter the plane. They said that they didn't see my box. I had to be moving up and down to be looking, went to back to the station, and so, but at the end of the day, my box was eventually found in the cabin, and they apologized to me.
To be honest, I've had good experiences flying locally. I've also had bad experiences flying locally. So my last experience was last month, and it was really bad.
After what had been an amazing 50 minutes flight from Abuja en route Lagos, it was about time to get back on the ground. The domestic wing of the Murtala Mohammed International Airport Lagos, otherwise known as MM2, is always buzzing with travelers moving from one part of the airport to another. So it was just the same on this day as we arrived, with multitudes of passengers getting prepped and set to take off. A quick dash into the city by my cameraman and I, and it was time for my return trip to the nation's capital. Though I had tried to ignore the feeling for the most part, I couldn't help the anxious thought that kept sneaking into my head. You know how it is when you think all is going well as far as a trip is concerned, until the airport speakers blares out that notice, either announcing a flight delay or worse, an outright flight cancellation. These are regular features of local air travels in Nigeria. The frequency of occurrence still remains a challenge for regulators to curb, but particularly for the operators to overcome. I hoped my case would be different on this trip, but alas, it wasn't to be. And so my wait begins. What started with a 1-hour delay announcement spanned into 2, and then more time went by. I watched the day turn into night and literally felt the frustration of restless passengers pacing the passenger departure lounge. In the words of a fellow passenger, the flight delays make you see and enjoy Nigerian airports a lot, and I couldn't agree more. Finally, it's time to go home, and just like everyone else, I couldn't wait to board the plane. Even though we had quite a wait, worry and unpleasant thoughts quickly gave way as the plane rose into the night sky and opened up the beauty of the city below. The display of over 1,000 twinkling lights definitely felt close to seeing a beautiful woman wearing a good makeup. Crankiness soon gave way as most passengers settled into a nice relaxing flight. As we made our descent, the tiny lights from the sky that looked like stars started to get bigger.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport,
And with
Abuja.
this announcement,
Local time now
home
is
and a
21
warm
minutes
meal
to the hour
felt
10 a.m.
closer.
For safety reasons, please.
Now that has been my entire day's experience. I mean, I went from Abuja to Lagos and all the way back. Maybe not just mine, but a little bit of some other people. Again, like I said, it could depend on the airline that you're going with and the route. In the end, we all hope for safe flights, good services, amazing experiences, and to meet the people that we left at home. Speaking of people I left at home, I gotta go home, it's late. I'll see you all in the studio. And here I am in the studio. Fantastic experience it was, if you ask me. Okay, time now to meet my guests in the studio. First, I have Professor Obiora Okonkwo. He is the CEO of United Nigeria Airline and the spokesperson of Airline Operators of Nigeria. You're welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you for having me on this show, Captain.
It's good to have you. Speaking of Captain, we have the real Captain in the studio. I also have Captain Roland Iai. He is a pilot and a former MD of Nigerian Airspace Management Agency. You're welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so before we get into all the questions, what did you think about my experience?
Typical Nigerian experience.
Wow, okay.
But I'm glad that you really acted patiently like you expected of a disciplined, through passenger.
Okay.
So that's what is expected.
Thank you. At least I didn't, start throwing tantrums at the airports.
Exactly.
How about you, Captain?
Well, listen, unfortunately, that experience, like you said, it's typical. But what a lot of passengers do not understand and what they know, they don't know, is that that experience is actually a culmination of several factors, most of which are out of the hands of the domestic operators.
Okay, and it's those factors that I want us to talk about today. So at least people don't stay at the airports and assume the worst. But before we get to that, I'm going to start with you, Professor Obiora. So let's start by discussing the demand for air travel and airfares, air travel airfares, and its connection with, traffic patterns have shown that we have busy routes, mostly Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt. Those are where you have basic traffic routes, but the others do not experience as much. So I want you to outline for me maybe strategies aimed at reducing airline operational costs, because that reflects in how much we have to pay for airfare So it looks like traveling by air is mostly for the affluent and sometimes the middle class.
It used to be so, but unfortunately now things have changed.
It used to be so.
It used to be so that it could be seen as for the rich, but now it's for everyone. Simply because from what we can see at the airports today, all those aboros and Ocho passengers in parks, because of the bad state of the road and then security, they've all moved to the airport. So basically, you see behaviors and actions at the airport if we were at the motor park. But let me tell you here, airline industry is deregulated.
Yeah.
And the fares and the cost are determined by a typical market situation, demand and supply. And of course, like you had mentioned, cost of operation.
Yes.
Today, one might simply say that some time ago, they were paying for a ticket for 20,000 naira. Correct. But that
my
time,
first airfare, I paid 2,000.
great. By that time, you paid 2,000. It could be when naira was probably 1 naira to $1.
Okay.
Or 5 naira to $1. Because I've said severally that the aviation currency is dollar. When you pay 20,000, it was probably when naira was 150 naira to $1. So if you may have been paying about $120. Our calculation is that for any domestic flight of about 1 hour, if you pay anything equivalent of less than $100, the airline is losing money. That's the case. So we say today that for any flight you booked for and paid for anything less than the dollar rate of 1,500, 150,000, the airline is losing money. The destination determines, depending on the traffic and also the season.
Okay,
just
yes,
like
season,
anything
that's also a
you do.
factor.
If you have Christmas period, for instance, you are moving from Lagos to Enugu State. You may have 100% pax load. Obviously, you have to charge at a premium. Then when you're going back to Lagos, you probably have only 10 passengers in a 180 capacity aircraft. You could even charge them for 50,000 if they have to fly. So these things are the factors. But by and large, beyond all those things, we're also being guided by the entire economic situation in Nigeria, where we have inflationary trends and all that. And if you look at the rise in the airfare, it's not affecting only travelers. It's affecting both the land transportation, it's affecting the fruits you buy in the market, the products you buy in the supermarket. So the recent inflationary trend we are facing in Nigeria had actually affected aviation, particularly in the area of airfare. So I guess that it's no gainsaying that again, what forms the component of your cost is also other charges.
So you're
We're
saying
being overcharged.
Yeah.
You know, there are so many
the
taxes.
airline operators now
The
are being
airline
overcharged.
operators were being charged for almost about 20 taxes and charges. So when you are actually paying that 150,000 naira, assuming you agreed to pay $100, out of that 150,000 naira, 70 to 80% of them had gone to charges. It's not the airline that is having them. So at the end of the day, the markup that might be left for the airline, depending on what you charge. If you charge right, it's about 10%, 5%. But if you charge below $100, trust me, the airline is subsidizing your travel.
Really?
Yes.
Subsidizing at that fare?
At that fare, it's
Okay.
subsidizing your travel.
So what I'm hearing is that as long as the inflation rate is as it is, the airfares will still be high.
Oh yeah.
Okay, but then I'm still going to point out that I don't agree with you when you say that going by air is for everybody. I don't exactly agree, because I think a woman who runs a petty shop on the road, if she has to travel, or maybe just a civil servant, rather than pay 150,000, which might just be my salary, I'll go take a bus for 50,000.
Well, it can never be
So it can't be for
100% of the population.
Okay.
But obviously, the people at the airport, you can agree with me, they are not really the rich. And that's why some of them overreact when they see certain situations, bearing in mind how much they thought they paid. So, so they think they're ready to commit murder. But when it was the rich, you know, when it was for
everyone
the rich,
is calm.
You would see, you know, you see the serenity, you see the behavior, you see everything. You know, those things. So for us in the business, we are just simply seeing ourselves as glorified or chop passengers. You know, chop passengers. You know, like,
I know them. Okay, Captain Iyayi, let me come to you. You are a pilot. Let me start by talking about the required experience for a pilot to fly a commercial plane. I mean, what number of flying hours would you require? I'm not sure someone who's flying a private jet can immediately qualify to fly a commercial plane. So what does it take from, you know, like what flying hours do I need to attain, not me now, maybe a pilot, to, you know, become a commercial pilot?
Well, I mean, what the law requires is that you do a minimum of 250 hours to become a commercially certified pilot.
Okay.
Flying a commercial airliner is a different, you know, kettle of fish. Essentially, after the initial training, which basically certifies you as a commercial pilot, obviously with multi-engine ratings and instrument ratings, you're required to do an additional type rating depending on the aircraft type you're flying.
Okay.
Flying school, obviously, I mean, you're flying aircraft less than 12,500 hours, I mean, 500 pounds. That means you require no type rating at all. However, when you're flying commercial airliners, i.e., you know, aircraft carrying passengers up and above between 20 and 100 and whatever it is, that weight category requires that you're type rated on that particular aircraft type. So the type rating itself for a particular aircraft could be anything from between $25,000 to $80,000, depending on the type of aircraft. However, when you come out of a flying school, you typically would go to fly what we have in the system. In Nigeria today, we have Boeing 737s as typical. We also have the Embraer 145s, those are 50-seater airplanes. We have Dash 8s, Bombardiers. So invariably, a fresh pilot will look at the type available in the market and try move in that direction to be able to get a seat on a commercial airliner. So typically, after your commercial flying, you now go to do a type rating. The type rating, like I said, anything from between 25 and whatever it is for the type you're looking at. If you do a 145 type, for instance, approximately is about $38,000. $38,000 on the cost of flying itself, which could be anything between $60,000 and $70,000. So it means that for you to be able to earn a right seat in a commercial airline, you know, you probably would have spent about $100,000.
Wow.
Yes.
So it's not just
many hours.
250 hours plus
hours plus, wow, that's a lot. I feel like clapping for the pilots right now. That's a lot of investment. But I want to talk about training and qualification. Yeah. So are pilots trained by the airlines they work for, or like part of what you said, you have to basically upgrade yourself by yourself to get a seat at the table?
Okay. So hitherto, airlines would naturally absorb pilots, send them for type training based on the aircraft types they operate and what vacancies they have. But in recent times, domestic airline operators have found a situation, whereby after training pilots on a type, some of them return from the type training and very quickly, jump ship to sort of, get into some other airline that's recruiting them for a bit more than they were supposed to be earning from the airline that actually trained them. So that has created a situation in the market such that domestic airlines now require fresh pilots to be rated before they are absorbed to come in the right seat.
So you have to do the extra work.
You do all that yourself. meaning that the airline is not willing to invest all that money now to bring you on board. But if you're able to do it and you're taken on board, then the airline subsequently assumes the liability or responsibility to train you for your recurrency checks, and if they need to upgrade you to another type of aircraft, the airline does that. But before you get into the airline, an airline will not necessarily want to expend all that money on you at this point, yes.
Okay, so Professor Obiora, help me put in proper perspective, yeah? The air transport subsector, when it comes to, in terms of contribution to transport output in Nigeria, as well as job creation, how much does it contribute to the GDP, job creation, and also its collaboration with tourism?
Yes, it's huge. The airline ecosystem worldwide is rated at nothing less than 3.5 trillion US dollars.
Okay.
So like it's usually said, if you have to estimate the GDP country-wise, it should be the 17th richest country in the world.
Wow.
And then it generates generally about 19 million jobs worldwide. So when we talk about airline, unfortunately in Nigeria, they only understand that to be buying a ticket and going to the
I don't
airport
like the way you add unfortunately to Nigeria.
No, there is more to that. Okay. Because if you look at Nigeria, for instance, our cash cow and core source of revenue is oil. Without aviation, there wouldn't be oil industry in Nigeria.
Okay. Because
majority of our oil activities and explorations are done offshore. And to get to the offshore, you need to hump into a helicopter and to get to the rigs. So they also played a critical role there. The products that come in that are not coming by sea from overseas, they're coming by cargo, and they're coming into Nigeria. So the economic impact is huge. So that's why we're worried that the operators, that this has not been quite understood typically here within the government sectors and policy makers to give it the required attention. Because we have all the indices in Nigeria that would make us a very robust and viable aviation industry. That is why some of the airlines, foreign carriers coming in and out of Nigeria, it's on record that this Nigeria is their most lucrative route.
Wow.
Just name them. If they go to any parts of the world, they may go as many as they do, but the optimum profit they make on Nigeria routes. We have the numbers, but out of all those, there are billions of US dollars spent by Nigerians on annual basis for international travels. Thank God, until APIS just joined recently, we are getting zero almost out of it. It's our money. The money could be domesticated in Nigeria. It could have strengthened the domestic operation. It would have created more jobs. And let it be known that the entire foreign carriers coming into Nigeria, you know them, just name them. The job they have in Nigeria is not up to 20% of the job only United Nigeria Airlines has created. Because the operational system is that they could just keep one person from their country and then jointly use other services to board and disembark passenger. So the emphasis must have to be made that this industry can help increase the GDP of this country. And prior COVID, it was doing very, very well. Before the COVID and then this mass inflation, we were like the third highest contributor to the GDP in Nigeria.
Wow.
And that's all private sector driven. There's no government investment or government involvement. There's no government special policy to support this.
Okay. So I wanted to talk about ticketing.
Yeah.
But before we get to talk about that, I wanted to see this feature. So I'm bringing you this feature. It was put together by Tochi. It's called The Business of Ticketing. Watch this and we'll be right back.
In the bustling world of aviation, the ticketing process stands as a pivotal gateway between the traveler's desire to explore and the realization of their journey. At its core, the ticketing process embodies a delicate balance of efficiency, security, and customer service. The first step always starts at the digital frontier. With the advent of online booking platforms and mobile applications, travelers wield unprecedented control over their travel plans. They navigate through an array of options, comparing prices, schedules, and seat preferences with the swipe of a finger. An airplane ticket is a legally binding contract between the passenger and the airline, outlining the terms and conditions of the travel agreement. This contract obligates the airline to provide transportation to the passenger, who in turn agrees to adhere to the airline's policies. Passengers can use this contract to their advantage to claim compensation for delays, cancellations, or lost baggage, as stipulated in the terms. Similarly, airlines can enforce rules regarding check-in times, baggage allowances, and passenger conduct, ensuring smooth operations and safety. There is, however, one thing that constantly proves difficult to comprehend, which is the answer to the question of why services differ from customer to customer, regardless of the fact that the same tickets of the same flight were purchased. This discrepancy is as a result of a few factors. 1. Ticket class and fare type. Airlines typically offer different classes of service. For example, economy, premium economy, business, first class, each with its own set of amenities and privileges. Even within the same class, there might be different fare types. For example, basic economy, standard economy, flexible economy, with varying levels of flexibility and included services. 2. Seat selection. While airlines offer complimentary seat selection, others may charge an additional fee for preferred seats, such as those with extra legroom or allocated near the front of the aircraft. The availability of these seats can also vary depending on factors like frequent flyer status or fare class. Ancillary services. Airlines often provide ancillary services such as priority boarding, extra baggage allowance, lounge access, in-flight Wi-Fi, and meals. These services may be bundled into higher fare types or availability for purchase separately, leading to differences in the overall travel experience. 4. Frequent flyer status. Passengers with elite status in an airline's frequent flyer program may receive additional perks and benefits such as complimentary upgrades, priority check-in, and enhanced baggage allowances, regardless of the ticket purchased. 5. Operational factors. Flight operations, including aircraft type, route, and time of travel, can influence the availability and quality of certain services. For example, long-haul international flights typically offer more amenities than short-haul domestic flights. 6. Customer preferences. Some passengers may choose to decline certain services or amenities offered by the airline, either to save money or due to personal preferences. For example, a passenger may opt out of in-flight meal service or entertainment options. Ultimately, the variability in service underscores the personalized nature of air travel, where each journey is uniquely crafted to meet the needs and preferences of individual travelers. As the aviation industry continues to evolve and innovate, it is this delicate balance between digital automation and human touchpoint that will continue to define the ticketing process, ensuring that every passenger's journey is not just a means of transportation, but a memorable experience in itself.
Thank you so much for that, Titi. And something that caught me in that report is that a lot of people do not know that their ticket is a legal binding document. I don't think I've ever taken the time to read the terms and conditions in
Fine
that.
print.
Anyway, I still have Professor Obiora in the studio and Captain Iyai. So the reason why I thought to talk about, meanwhile, do remember that our phone lines are open. Send your messages to 091-3898-9550. The number should be on your screen. So send your messages, share experiences, comments, questions, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer them. So the reason why I want to talk about ticketing is, and Professor Obiora, this is directed to you, refund. So I'm going to tell a little story. There was a time I was traveling from Lagos to Abuja. I had a very important meeting for 11:30. So my flight was for 9:45. This was what happened. The flight was suddenly cancelled at about 8. No reason. But then all we just wanted was refund. So that we can buy another ticket to travel. And we were told it will take about, we are going to write, and it will take another 14 working days, blah, blah, blah. So if that was my last option, so I want to find out why it's very difficult to get refunds after you bought the ticket for travel.
Yeah, first of all, I have to commend the beautiful job that you have done here. We need more of that to be done by entities like you, because it's quite informative and educative. However, the operators in Nigeria that I speak for are very mindful of the inconveniences and the consequences of cancellation of flights and delays. We know it affects schedules, it irritates people. Sometimes even as chairman of an airline, I get furious even with my own people if I'm about to travel. I told them I'm here as a passenger, not a chairman, so I know how it feels like. But at the same time, I can tell you that even the operators have more to lose when there are cancellations and they're out of schedule.
Really?
Or they have more to lose.
Please do tell.
So no operator would ever wish for no reason to delay or cancel a flight. But from every available indices, about 90% of reasons why flights are cancelled and delayed are beyond the operator and outside the scope of operator's control. And sometimes also, passengers like you and like many others would easily say no reason was given. Sometimes 99% of the time, reasons are given, but it's probably what you don't want to hear. So you pretend that you have not had it, because any passenger that leaves his house or her house heading to the airport, the only thing you have in mind is getting to your destination. There are rules that apply. We have ICAWA rules. We have NCA passenger right bills. And in these things, it's stipulated if you are delayed for 30 minutes, for instance, you must talk to the passengers and give them reason. If you are delayed for 2 hours, there are some refreshments. If you are delayed for 3 hours, there are other compensations.
Yes.
And I can tell you, Nigerian operators bend themselves twice to meet all these things. Even beyond and more than what we experience overseas for 45 minutes, 15 minutes flight. But in the midst of that, I can tell you that as much as I understand and we value our customers, the expectations of a typical Nigerian passenger is more than any expectation I've seen in any part of the world. Our planning period and so on and so forth. If there is a sudden delay, for instance, if you are boarding, if you're about to board an aircraft, and then the crew is inside the cockpit doing the last recharge before they call for boarding, and there is a signal in the dashboard that requires to be checked. There may be no reason, there may be no problem actually.
And it just pop up.
If it pops up, everything must come to a standstill.
Yeah, Captain, you're going to speak to that when he's done.
Because it's a security issue. I can tell you that our regulatory system in Nigeria is second to none in any part of the world.
For real?
This is what many people may not know. It's second to none. Things that we don't tolerate. Don't forget that Nigerian operators also partner with foreign carriers who employ engineers, we employ captains, and lease aircraft from overseas. And these aircrafts are inspected and certified by NCA. The things they take bad in some foreign countries, they'll be looking at us and say, what for?
For real?
This
Again?
works for us. Oh,
Wow.
yes. It's something I want us
That's
to know.
impressive.
So when those things do happen, and you get to the airport, you want your refund right there, fine. Certain delays of certain hours deserves immediate refund. Thanks to technology today, transfers and all that, that can be achieved. But again, what we do see is that somebody like you may have requested your ticket to be bought by your agent or a protocol officer who in the payment process and all the details of the payment is through his account of that protocol officer or the agent. And the rule is that you have to refund to the account that made the payment, the source that you received that. So if you arrive there and asking for your money...
And that's in the tickets? That rule is in the ticket?
It is the rule.
Okay.
It's the rule. It's general. It's universal. You know, because otherwise you might pay Mr. A, and then Mr. B shows up next day and say, "Where's my money?" So it may have been more often than none. That's what we experience.
Okay.
Somebody has the ticket. It's your name there. You have ID. You have international passport, and they're showing the officer in that place, this is my ticket, this is my ID, I want my refund. And when they go to the system, it's not your name that paid, it's not your name that bought. And it is that person that has the details in the system should apply for the refund. Okay. This is really what happens most of the time. So now for that delay or that cancellation, it could be for many reasons. The only time it could be attributed to the operator, if there is that AOG that would have brought about unscheduled maintenance, that they cannot fly. Okay. And let me tell you, instead of showing irate behaviors and getting nervous, you should thank your God and praise the airline. You know why? You know why? For that airline to be on ground, it's losing money. The only business that brings money to any operator is when it's on the air. When it's flying, and it has to fly according to that, not when it's refunding money.
Well, you say they should thank their God.
And let me tell you also that one thing you may have not known is that if, for instance, it's towards evening, one gentleman here says that he likes to fly in the morning. It's okay, wise decision, but it could be that you are flying in the evening, and this aircraft took off from Lagos, and from nowhere, NCA has to do their job, and they show up to do what they call ramp inspection, uninformed inspection to make sure everything you are playing the rules. Yeah. That might take another 1 hour.
Wow.
It delays. And then that guy wants to take off to come to Lagos to pick you. There's bad weather.
Okay, I understand the bad
what
weather.
I'm saying what might lead to cancellation. I'm just giving some scenario. There is bad weather. He must have to wait for the weather to clear. By the time it's 1 or 2 hours before the weather clear, 3-4 hours. And then for him to get to where you are going, to go to a destination, he will go beyond 6:30, which they call sunset. That means he can't land at that airport.
I'm sure.
And more often than not, they might see the aircraft, you see right the crew, but they can't fly to that destination because the airport is closed.
Okay, Professor, I completely understand when it is the weather. I'm sure we can, when it's the weather, we all can understand that it's the weather.
No.
But then let me speak to you, Captain. Captain, let's talk about, let me speak to you in the area of air malfunction issues. You know, we recently had a few mishaps. I'm sure you know about it. I don't want to call anybody, so it doesn't like
incidents.
Incidents, right? Okay. Plane landing off the runway and all of that issue. So when issues like this come up, I know Professor Obiora has talked a lot about things that pop up and all that. Can it be mostly technical, or when something like that happens, could it be mostly technical or a question of the pilot?
Okay, so
experience and all, yeah.
Let me say this: when you have an incident or accident, is a culmination of several factors.
Okay.
Not one factor. For you to end up with a situation where, you know, there's a near mishap, it's a culmination of several things. So you really can't take one factor and say, oh, this is why it happened. Now, when you have, you know, incident or accident investigations, you have what you call the probable cause, right?
Yes.
Now, in the cases that you've mentioned, you know, there are attributory factors, you know, or contributory factors.
Okay.
You cannot take one in isolation of the other.
They're all connected.
They're all connected. Now, I don't want to speak specifically to any incident, but let me just take a scenario. An aircraft flies into an airport. Just before landing, there had been heavy weather and there was heavy rain. The runway was waterlogged before landing. The pilot came in and landed. Now, the scenario is different. When you're landing on a waterlogged runway and a dry runway, they're two different things.
Of course.
The technique is a little bit different. If you come in, like we say, you want to have a greaser, that you want to make it as smooth as possible, that passengers don't even feel the touchdown, and you have a waterlogged runway, you could end up aquaplaning.
And that means?
It means that you land, but the tires of the airplane does not have a positive contact with the actual runway. It stays on a film of water on the runway. It's like glass. So you actually slide over that without breaking the friction, the friction off the water to be able to contact the runway.
Right.
So that is something that a lot of people may not understand, but it does happen. So when you have a situation where some of these things are there, and maybe it's not recognized by the pilot in time to be able to do the right things, you could end up with certain situations or certain developments like some of the things we've had. And in some cases, it's not really the pilot, because the pilot's done everything that he needs to do.
He should do, yeah.
And of course, you now end up with a situation where, you know, something happens. I mean, veering off the runway, you know, and then getting stuck in soft ground, and then having a landing gear, a nose gear collapse. Those are things that can happen even with a perfect airplane. Because the sideways forces acting on the airplane when it's going on the side is not designed for that.
Right.
So by the time he gets into sort of gets into soft ground, the friction, the force, the impact of going into soft ground is like hitting something.
Right.
That itself is more than sufficient to get the nose gear to collapse in some cases. But like I said, I don't want to be specific about anything. But most of the times, I mean, this is what anybody should understand.
So it could either be this or that.
Yes.
There are usually no...
It's a culmination of several factors.
So many things, okay.
So a pilot will not want to fly when the factors are not favorable.
Right.
So to that extent, here you have a very reasonable, you know, and somebody who understands the value of life. So nobody would want to get into the cockpit and fly risking their own lives to start with. So to that extent, you feel safe going into that aircraft. And a pilot will not accept an aircraft that is not airworthy. Because before every flight, you know, an engineer signs off an aircraft to the pilot. It's now the responsibility of a pilot to take that aircraft and accept it from the engineer based on the condition of the aircraft.
Okay.
So these are things that are done even before every flight, unknown to the pilots, I mean to the passengers.
Well, I'm actually glad you're both pointing out all this today, because I did know a lot of this. When you're sitting down there and you're anxious and you're a bit bothered, you just feel the airline operators or the people in charge are just sitting there and wondering, and you know, taking care of things that you do not know, but they're wasting your time.
No.
But before we go on a quick break, Professor Obiora, I want to ask you this. Let's talk about, I want you to tell me about what rights does a passenger, like the moment you purchase that air ticket, what are my rights as a passenger on that airline?
I will answer that. But before then, I have to quickly add to what
he said,
my good friend has said, Captain. Beyond all those things, sometimes also there is supposed to be a communication between the cockpit crew and the tower.
Okay.
And from the cockpit, you may not know everything about the situation on the ground.
But
you may
that's
not
why there's
see
a
everything
communication,
around
right?
you.
Yeah.
You have to rely on information from the cockpit, from the tower. So sometimes, if the tower did not give the cockpit crew enough information to take decision, they might come into a situation that they were not prepared for. It could be a reason. And like you said, we've been talking about incidents. It could happen anywhere. It's just like you have seen people who just walk out of the mechanic workshop and something happens. But why, the question I also want us to be adding to that is, why is it continuing to happen mainly in one airport?
Oh.
There could have been something also, because in other airports, both in Nigeria and in overseas, it rains. Why does it always have this water settlement
In
at
this
this
particular airport?
when it rains? Yeah. It's avoidable. Something has to be done to stop that from happening.
Well,
We're interested in having that an issue. However, coming to the question which
You're still going to speak on what you wanted to say, but go ahead, Professor.
Yeah, coming to that question, passengers have a lot of rights.
Okay.
And as much as they have a lot of rights, they also have a whole lot of restrictions
Okay.
on certain behaviors they must not exhibit at the airport. But more often than not in Nigeria, people tend to talk more of passengers' rights when there are delays, when there are cancellations. Let me tell you, delays and cancellation happen anywhere
In the world,
any
of
part of the
course.
world. And you cannot stop it. The only thing that all that are involved are working is to minimize that, to reduce the frequency. But will it continue to happen? It will happen. Then when it happens, your rights are stipulated in ICAO rules, and in what we have known as NCA passenger right bill. And that is right of compensation, right of ticket return,
Okay.
and the right of rescheduling upon availability.
Upon availability.
Availability, yes.
So when it's not available,
No,
I'm
you
left
see-
hanging.
Okay, yeah, that's one thing I want to point out here. We are scheduled airline operators.
Okay.
The schedule means is that by 7 a.m. tomorrow, there is already a flight with number that is scheduled to take off from Lagos to Abuja.
Right.
There are people who have purchased the
The
ticket.
tickets.
If by this night you could not get to your destination because the airport has closed and the flight is cancelled, that affects your own flight. But what we do see, and then what you need to do now is look at the availability that's available within your own schedule. But because of unruly behavior that has been so rampant with Nigerian passengers, these passengers will sit down there and say no order of your aircraft
What travel?
should
Unless
depart
you sort
that
them out.
place until you sort us out.
I've had to witness that one.
Well, so this is why I tell you we are just aboros or chop passengers in the airport. That can never happen in any part of the world. So when you are delayed, or your flight is cancelled, there is a place you want to approach to seek for what is due to you. And I can tell you that 95% of the time, local operators are equipped and prepared to provide these services. But these passengers, that's not what they want at that particular point in time. Okay. They want their destination. I'll give you a quick example.
Okay, very quick.
When an airline was supposed to land in Warri, approaching Warri, the airspace weather was bad. The aircraft hovered around Warri area for 1 hour. Then had some fuel challenge. The alternate airport, because before you take off from any destination, you must have two alternate airports. The alternate airport was Enugu. The aircraft, the best thing that has to be done, best practices, proceeded to Enugu to refuel, pending better weather in Enugu. While they were waiting for weather to be better in Enugu, to fly back to Warri. It passed Warri. That they were caught up with Sunset. That means the aircraft can't go to Warri anymore.
Okay.
And then the pilot announced, since we cannot go to Warri, the rule is that you must take them back to their point of origin.
Wow.
Now, when this guy now said, we are going back to Abuja, then the passenger said, you are not leaving this Enugu airport, take us to Warri. How could you resolve such a thing?
Well, another thing, I think that could happen because they're not aware that the rule says you take them back.
Great.
All they're hearing is what the pilot announced.
Okay. You see, you come down to one aspect. You have done a great job. This is actually the first time NTA is giving the sector this focus. We want you to find a way that we can collaborate with the operators to also start talking on what passengers need to know. As much as they are right and they are don't. Because this thing is not only affecting the operator, but it's embarrassing our whole system.
We'll find a way to work that out. Captain, let me ask you this. You were once the MD of Nigeria Airspace Management Agency. So I want to know, are there specific advancements in air traffic control technology that you'd want to see implemented in Nigeria, such as drone integration and the likes?
Well, yeah, thank you very much.
We have very short time, so very quickly, sir.
Drone is a new technology.
Yes.
Even in the advanced economies, it's still being tested. You even have urban air mobilities being looked at to, air taxis and stuff like that. That itself has been looked at a different level in terms of integration with the current systems and all that. It's maybe a decade away. They would fly, but a decade away. The technologies we have here, really and truly, we need to embrace even more technology, because one of the issues we have in this country today is a shortage of manpower. But the good news is that we can bridge the gap using technology. But we have not found the focus, as it were, as an industry, to actually look in the right direction to do the right things. Because most of the things we get to hear in terms of projects being done are projects that are not adding any real values to the sector. I mean, building something that is not going to add value today is useless to the sector. Most of the issues you're talking about, passenger experience, boils down to infrastructure.
True.
So if you do not have a comfortable terminal building, if you do not have seamless facilitation at the airports, if you do not have the basics in place, how do you expect? How would you not expect the passenger experience to be meaningful? Now, all those sectors are actually under the purview of government, not the operators.
The operators, okay.
So I think we need to embrace technology, phenomenally, to bridge that gap that we are, currently trying to make up for. There's a lot that needs to be done. Air traffic controllers moved on. We don't have adequate numbers of air traffic controllers, which is why we're talking about sunset airports. Airports are there, but nobody to control them, so people can't fly into them beyond a particular time. So that's an infrastructure issue and human capital asset issue. However, the technology there is, you could actually have what you call virtual towers, meaning that you can have a tower located in Benin, but controlling airports in Warri, controlling airports in Owerri. But those are things that we should embrace now to bridge. But we're not looking in the direction because obviously the interest is different, I guess. But we need to embrace technology to bridge the gap, to enhance safety and also the security of our airspace.
Hopefully, in the nearest future, we will embrace the technology. I want to thank the both of you for being on the show today. Your time is fast spent. But in 30 seconds each, I just want to ask, I think yesterday there's been a new rule for toll gate fares, that no one is exempted, even the president and the vice president is not exempt. I just want you to comment on that a little before we go. Professor Brown, I'll start with you.
Wow. I wonder why I should worry about toll gates for drivers. I should concentrate on the airline.
I understand
but
that.
Anyway,
you're still going to drive past.
Well, I think that, we don't really want to over-influence decision of the appropriate quarters to generate revenue But only thing I wish is that they will also match that with adequate services.
Okay.
You know, without that, and that's what we're also calling in the airline industry. And before we close, it's important for us to mention that we need services. They don't just collect bills from the toll gate. They're marking bills on every other thing. But you see, the rule that it is, a CAWA rule all over the world, is that for you to impose any bill, you must have the act, you must have the authorization to collect that bill, and you must be able to offer service that is commensurate with the bill you are correct. But the industry, again, maybe we should seize this opportunity, since the government watching here, the industry needs support.
Okay.
We need policies, you know what I mean, and we need access to capital to be competitive, because we cannot compete in this. But the operators, all of us today, and those we are representing, are patriotic Nigerians who understand
and I'm sure
the
they will
economic
do the
import
needful.
of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Professor Obiora Okonkwo, the CEO, United Nigeria Airlines, and spokesperson, Airline Operators of Nigeria, and Captain Roland Iyayi, a pilot and a former MD, Nigeria Airspace Management Agency. Thank you so much for being on the Medley Show today. And with that, we've come to the end of the show for today. Do join us again next week for another interesting conversation on the Medley Show. My name is Tochi. See you next week. Bye-bye.